All right, we need to talk about the tragic death of Henry Nowak. Now, Tommy Robinson just put out this video a couple of hours ago, and I've never seen him more infuriated. So we're going to watch it, and then we're going to talk about it. Let's go.
You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate.
I've never seen anyone die on camera before.
All right, well...
Yeah, I mean, never mind what I feel, that his parents have had to see that time and time again. They saw it in court. They will live with that memory all of their lives. They have to live with that.
Because you created this atmosphere, not just the handcuffing officer, you, the government, Keir Starmer, every one of you brought in these policies that attack white people. That's what it is.
In the UK right now, you got a group of cops that let a young man die after being stabbed to death.
You should see that scumbag's brother, who should be charged for perverting the course of justice. He fucking lied.
All right, just some quick context on this story about the guy's brother who did the stabbing. So the family, get this, the mum hid the murder weapon, which was this ceremonial Sikh knife, which they're allowed to just walk around with all the time. So apparently in the UK, it's perfectly fine to express your religious beliefs and symbols without a problem. But if you're a Christian, you're not allowed to pray on the streets. Wearing a cross is offensive. But anyway, the brother called the police to say that Henry was a racist, right? So that's why he was calling the police. Not to say that his brother has just murdered someone, no. To call about some kind of racist thing. So that was a lie. The police showed up with that in mind. The father was there when the police arrived and didn't say anything that this boy had been stabbed. This guy, Vikram, stood over Henry as he died and then was just moaning about his own non-existent injuries, okay? So these are the kinds of people you're dealing with here that are involved in the murder of Henry Nowak. Let's continue.
So, the video has been released of Henry Nowak's murder. And what you see and what you witness, and what we've witnessed since the murder, since this has all come to light in the court case, in the media over the last week, is silence from Keir Starmer, silence from Angela Rayner, silence from Sadiq Khan, silence from everyone who wasn't silent about George Floyd. Now, I went this morning onto Hampshire Police's website to have a look, because we need to try and understand why a dying white boy had his hands tied behind his back, was handcuffed, even when he said, "I've been stabbed, get me an ambulance," multiple times, yeah? But it doesn't take long once you go onto the website of Hampshire Police, because you need to understand that this infection or this disease that's embodied in every single government institution, not just government institution, it's in the media. This anti-white racism, this woke mindset, it outraged me, what I read and continued to read as I worked my way through the website. Introduction. The murder of George Floyd. This is on the national policing policy of our country in every police force. The murder of George Floyd by a serving police officer in USA in 2020 was a pivotal moment for policing in the UK. Really? Why? Driving the need for real change. Whilst this tragic event happened in another country, policing across the UK over many years has a strained relationship with some communities. Nationally, the Police Race Action Plan was created to address the racial disparities and distrust associated with policing, particularly for those in minority communities. Much has been done by policing to address racism in the police and society. Policing is more inclusive, more diverse, and more reflective of our communities. Do you know what that means, more inclusive and more diverse? It means the white boy's getting trampled on. That's what it means. It means the white boy's never the victim, right? The minute an accusation of racism is put in, it elevates up to here. So it didn't matter that he'd been stabbed. It doesn't matter. You've said some nasty words to someone that's not white. This elevates all the way up. Why does it elevate all the way up? You just have to look at their policing programme. You have to look. We will pursue, this is on the government and the police website, every police force. We will pursue offenders and deal with offences that cause the most harm to our ethnic minorities. What about the most harm to the public? What about us? We're a minority. In many towns and cities, we're a minority in London. We're a minority in many estates, many boroughs, many areas. It's this same diversity training aimed at white people when we're the minority. 30% of attacks in the country are on us, white people. The biggest epidemic in our country wasn't against ethnic minorities, it was by ethnic minorities, against white people, white kids. Do you see any of that on the government's website? We hear so often from the police, we've learned. You've learned all. You've learned nothing. You're still tying the hands behind the back of white boys while they've been stabbed and killed. Not because of the ignorance of the police officer, but because of your policy failures, your indoctrination within the system.
This is from The Telegraph. I want to discriminate against white candidates, says police chief. Chief Constable, right, very high up in the police, accused of racist recruitment policy, which supports a law change to bolster ethnic minority numbers in the police force. It's right there. It has always been the case over the last 10 years that the British policing is racist against white people.
This coming February, guards are hoping to recruit 800 guards and 400 guards staff. Recruitment drive will be starting sometime in mid-February. So any members that is seeking to join the guards, and I encourage, it's a good opportunity. We have difficulty in engaging with yourselves as regards, your language and your background and things like that. So any person that is thinking of joining the guards or joining the guard staff, we would very much welcome them.
We have printed out, I think Abdul Ahmed told me, I think it's something like, Miriam, 26 different nationalities in the mosque. So we have it printed out, and you might correct us. The sheet we give out, is that Arabic? It is Arabic, yeah. So I know maybe not everybody speaks Arabic, but there's English. There's English ones.
But the organisation that I represent is one that wants to be inclusive. It wants to have members of all the communities that it serves, because we serve you. And if Sir Ian Livingston were here tonight, he would remind us of a Pelian principle that we are just citizens in uniform. We're sworn officers, and we're sworn to keep you alive, prevent crime and detect crime, regardless of people's faith or origin. So we need people from your community, our community, to join the service. So that's the recruitment bit over. We are taking on the risks as we speak.
It goes on, making sure that staff and officers are trained to recognise and deal with crimes that impact our ethnic minorities. What about the English? What about us? Address any disproportionality in our response for outcomes for victims from black and ethnic minorities. It's just website after website, page after page. Look at this. Behaviour which amounts to discrimination through unwitting prejudice. What? What are you taught? This is communism. This is communism embedded in our policing structure. There is the facts that they don't want to see, that no one wants to see. This shows, this is the statistics when I started going through them, that black people are overrepresented among both homicide and convicted homicide offenders relative to their share of the population. Understand what that means? Guess what? White people are underrepresented relative to their population. We're less likely to be racist murderers, less likely than the minorities. We're more likely to be the victims of these murders than the minorities. Now ask yourself this, will Henry Nowak have a museum named after him? Will his mother or father get a peerage? Will they get roads named after him, like Stephen Lawrence? No one's even mentioning their name. The New York Times haven't wrote one article. They wrote hundreds about George Floyd. This is the bias. You see what he's talking about there? There is.
This is such a great point by Tommy. The connection with Henry Nowak and George Floyd are just uncanny. And deep down, the left wish that George Floyd was of the same character as this Henry Nowak guy. And so this was just such a great video that I saw on Instagram that really just summarizes the whole thing. So let's just watch this quickly. Again, we'll come back to the Tommy Robinson thing. There was just so much to unpack in this whole story.
George Floyd was a career criminal who had been arrested at least 9 times, had pre-existing heart conditions, and was on 11 ng per milliliter of fentanyl, which is well within overdose range, at the time of his death. He was saying, "I can't breathe," before he was put on the ground. Didn't matter. The Liberals burned and destroyed over $2 billion worth of property during the riots following that incident. Henry Nowak was an 18-year-old first-year university student who was stabbed 5 times on his way home from the pub by a religious psych man with a ceremonial blade. But the killer falsely claimed that Henry was a racist towards him, so the police handcuffed Henry and he bled out on the ground during his arrest. Henry said, "I can't breathe," 4 times before dying. They arrested the victim because the killer screamed racism. This is insane. Well, yesterday the killer was convicted and he will go to jail for at least 21 years. Should be longer. The left's policies of race-obsessed policing, open borders that import weapons-obsessed cultural practices, and 2-tier justice systems that treat false racism claims as gospel while downplaying actual crime, that creates this exact deadly mismatch, where cops are trained to handcuff a bleeding victim first and ask questions later. So there you have that. The only reason we're talking about this is because social media blew it up months later. The Prime Minister of the UK did not say a lick until yesterday. 0 riots have taken place and 0 buildings have burned down. Both of the situations I described are awful, and police brutality is unacceptable. But both of these men could not breathe, and the left and the mainstream media only care about one.
I used to think, if you look at working class education, you look in the schools at how successful white working class kids are. We're here, black, Chinese, Indian, they're up here. Yeah, they're succeeding because everything's aimed at them. And I used to think this disparity within education was down to neglect and us being forgotten. It's not. It's actually bloody targeted us. We're being targeted by our own systems of institutional racism. After Stephen Lawrence had done an investigation for institutional racism in the police force, they've gone full the other way. Now they're racist against you if you're white. You've got no chance if you're white. Working class, white, straight, male, and Henry would not, this is a fact, would not have had his hands tied behind his back if he wasn't white. That's it. And if you dig up my speeches, I have spoke about this for 20 years, more. I told a story when I was in Luton, start of the EDL, my cousin rang, said it's all kicking up on the estate with Muslims. So I flew up to the estate. The estate's called Farley Hill. We jumped in a taxi, got out of the car. There's Muslim men with bats and poles, and they're fighting English kids, white kids, who are 14 and 15. I stood and just watched as this fight was going on. The young kids were giving it a good go, but the adult men were beating them up with weapons. The Muslim men. The police come screeching in the road. These kids are victims of an assault and an attack with weapons. They jumped on the white kids. They jumped straight on them. I've seen this my whole life. And I'm saying, what are you doing? And as he's got the white boy on the floor while the Muslim's standing with a base bat, what do you want us to do? Their hands are literally tied behind their back, the police. We are victims. No one. We're the biggest victims of racism, white people. Our daughters are the biggest victims of racism, white girls. That's the fact. Why is that not on none of your websites? Policing unit, your future of policing for safety of the country. What about us?
Like, the entire system is so hell-bent against native people in Europe, it's just not even funny. And then, to add insult to injury and to kick white people while they're down, white people are being forced to believe this absolute nonsense doctrine that white people are the oppressors, whilst they're being crushed under the boot of this nonsense woke ideology, right? Where no matter where you look, all the employment systems in most industries these days are favoring black and brown people over white people, whether that be in Hollywood, whether that be in advertising, in modeling, in the military, in policing, in government, in university hiring, in the classrooms, K through 12. No matter where you look, black and brown people are being prioritized over white people, and white people are losing out because they're white. This is actually institutionalized racism.
What about us? That's the problem here. Everything is targeted against us and protection of minorities. We're a minority now, and none of those protections are given to us. Nothing is aimed at us. You can read, the stuff I was reading, 30.6% of white people are racially or religiously targeted with hate. Do you hear that? Well, when you go through the nationwide police program, if there's no focus, none, on anti-white racism. There's plenty of focus on blacks and Islamophobia. Plenty. What about us? What about us? It's like we don't matter. White kids don't matter. White children don't matter. Everything's aimed at every other minority, everyone else. And that can be seen in the visual optics of Henry bleeding out, dying out, while police say no and they ignore him because this brown person said he was a victim of racial words. That's it. Do you know this brown person? Do you know even once they found out he'd stabbed him 5 times, they still didn't handcuff him. He wasn't handcuffed to the police car. He wasn't handcuffed in the police car. He wasn't handcuffed in the police station. Why? This training is why. This discrimination, anti-white agenda is why. And it's embedded in our government, police, media, all of them. Every institution is embedded in, and diversity needs to be taken out. Every person in a position of power within, Donald Trump's been successful in doing it in the United States, whether this is going to bring about the change that's needed. Because change is needed for this institutional racism. It's needed. And this should be the turning point.
It's so sad to see this footage of Henry Nowak. Eternal be his memory. Eternal be his memory. And look, we have not seen the billions of dollars worth of damage from the rioting and the looting, which we saw all across America, right? You saw the footage of, largely speaking, African Americans basically burning down all the department stores and stealing televisions and just destroying the place, setting things on fire, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars raised for Black Lives Matter, this bogus charity which the founders just spent on Ferraris and Lamborghinis and mansions and paying themselves huge checks. You know, we saw celebrities from Billie Eilish to, you know, all the actors in Hollywood rolling out on the red carpet, wearing their little badge. NFL, baseball, basketball, American football, like every sporting event, everyone's taking the knee. Endless platitudes and speeches from all the mayors and politicians and police officers and heads of departments. Schools doing it, taking the knee, making classes do it. You had streets just filled with trains of people, like rivers of people flowing through the streets, holding these signs, defund the police in every city across America, including many countries, like all countries across Europe. You had the Iranian government even making a statement about George Floyd in Australia, in New Zealand, everywhere. Right? And yet, Henry Nowak, he's white. He's not a drug dealer. He doesn't have a criminal record, unlike George Floyd, who I believe tried to stab or shoot a pregnant woman, right? That was conveniently left out. Wasn't overdosing on drugs, right? Not to take away from the death of George Floyd, but can we have some context, please? Right? This is why I'm absolutely done with the moral posturing of the left. Nothing they say makes any sense anymore. They are just a walking contradiction. They don't care about anything. They don't care about anything. But anyway, I'll be covering this more on the show going forward. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe, comment down below, give this video a thumbs up, and hype it if you can. And I'll speak to you in the next one. God bless.